Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Ave Maria Press Professional Development Webinar Series. In today's webinar, Daniel Miller and Ali Parsley will discuss how to help young people lean on their faith during times of crisis. My name is Erin Pierce. I am the Parish and Curriculum Marketing Specialist at Ave Maria Press. I would like to recognize our webinar partners, the National Conference for Catechetical Leadership, the National Association of Catholic Family Life Ministers, the National Association for Lay Ministry, and the Catholic Campus Ministry Association. Everyone in the audience is muted today, but you are able to ask questions. Questions may be sent to our presenters using the questions section of the GoToWebinar panel, and I'll read as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation today. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to that recording will be sent to you tomorrow via email. With that, I would like to welcome and introduce our presenters today. Daniel Miller is the Director of Student Ministry at Church of the Nativity in Timonium, Maryland. He previously led youth ministry at a suburban parish in Seattle, Washington, and a rural parish in Caldwell, Idaho, before coming to Nativity in 2017 after being inspired by reading Rebuilt. Daniel is the primary vision caster and content creator for student ministry at Nativity, which welcomes 400 middle and high schoolers each week and has a team of over 100 adults serving as student ministers. Ali Parsley is the Associate Director of Student Ministry at Nativity. She grew up during an unprecedented period of growth for Nativity and returned to work for the parish in 2017. As the Associate Director, Ali is responsible for communication with families, record keeping, and data management in student programs, and she also contributes to the messages, content creation, and minister direction. She is a small group leader for 6th grade girls and gives adult small group messages for the parish. Daniel and Ali, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and pull up your presentation here, and I'm going to close out my camera and let you all take it over.
Great. Well, we are just excited to be with you today and to hear hopefully a little bit about the things that you're experiencing with your questions as we go along. We're going to share a little bit about our experience, but this is a moment in time when there just are no experts. Nobody really knows what we're doing because it's unprecedented. That word's been tossed around a lot lately, and just this new time in ministry with students, with church in general, and how we are ministering to our people. So I'm going to start us with a little bit of prayer, and then we'll get into our presentation. So let's pray in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Lord, thank you for this group assembled today, for the work that they continue to do in this new and unprecedented time. We know that you are faithful to us in the ministry that we are called to, and that you are faithful to the people that we serve, especially to our young people, to the teens who might be struggling during this time. I just pray that this can be a fruitful time of talking about best practices for times of crisis and how to use those to steer people to you, to the one place that we can always lean on in our times of trouble. So we love you, Lord, and we give this time to you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, well, we are not experts because there are no experts in this field, but we wanted to share a little bit with you today about what we've been learning these last couple of months and really the last couple of years. We're going to talk about crisis today and how to build your credibility when it comes to crisis and even before crisis hits, not just for quarantine, but for crucial life moments all the time. And these are moments when everything really seems to stop, when you know that nothing is going to be the same from that point on, and you hit those life moments. We want to be able to leverage them for our teens in a way that they are steered toward faith. And we don't want to take advantage of that moment. It's not what leveraging really means, but really teaching them how to find comfort in our church and in Christ. So ultimately, we want to equip our teens to have Christ and the church in their life for when crisis comes, because it really is a question of when and not if.
Yeah, like Daniel said, it is when crisis comes, not if it does, because there are different types of crisis that all teens are going to experience, that all people experience at different points in their lives. And today we're going to talk about two different types specifically. One is internal crisis and the other is external crisis. So internal crises stems from bad decisions. It's a crisis of their conscience or their confidence in themselves. Internal crises happen when they play a part in the situation or decision that caused the crisis. They foster some responsibility or blame or guilt in this crisis. Daniel and I experienced this a few years ago on our confirmation retreat. We had sent our students out on an activity on an Emmaus walk, so they were partnered up randomly with someone else. We gave them a bag filled with questions and candy, and so we sent them off to roam the campground that we were staying at and just get to know that other person and connect with them. Some students, as they were roaming, they found a part of the campus that we had never actually been to, didn't even know existed, way up on a hill. And there they found a shed and took it upon themselves to go into that shed and open the spray paint that they found inside. And they proceeded to deface the property of the camp up there. As that time continued, students started to flow up there and join. It ended up being close to 70 students that ended up spray painting. Some of them just wrote their names in hearts and crosses, and others wrote profanity and offensive language. So there was a wide range of the involvement of these students in what had happened. But when we gathered them all, when we realized what had happened and we gathered them all back in our meeting hall, Daniel spoke to them, kind of bringing to light what they just did and the severity of what they just did. They broke the law. They defaced property that was not theirs. And when that happened, in that moment, we gave them an opportunity to take that responsibility. And they didn't have their phones for the weekend. We asked them to keep them at home, but all of the leaders were waiting outside the meeting hall with their personal cell phones ready. And Daniel challenged them that if they felt that they played some role in this and that they harbored some responsibility, that they could go ahead and call their parents and own up to what they did. And in that moment, we saw a lot of internal crisis hit. Some of these students who just wrote their name and had no idea they were doing anything wrong, because when they got up there, there were 50, 60 kids already spray painting. They thought it was part of the activity, even though we never mentioned spray paint. But in their minds, they thought that it might have been where the activity ended. But still, they knew now what they had done and what they had done wrong. And you could see it on their face and you could hear it in their voice. And that was a moment of internal crisis for a lot of these students. So that's an internal crisis. External is something outside of your control. This could be death, injury, illness, divorce, any kind of life change. These are crises that they experience, but they don't play a direct role in. However, even though they don't have a direct role, they do have a direct impact on them. So we want you guys, this is the internal and external, and we want to invite you guys just in that chat to kind of engage. We're going to talk through a lot of different things throughout this webinar. So if you want to engage in conversation with one another in that chat, talk about some internal and external crises that you've experienced with students or families in your parish, and things you've learned or experiences you've had, go ahead and share that with one another. Daniel is actually going to share an experience of external crisis he had early on when he was first at Nativity.
Yeah, just a couple of months into my time at our parish, I was asked to go on a home visit to the Johnson family. It wasn't a family that I knew, but a couple of staff members and our pastor, Father Michael, was asked to go visit this home. And I didn't know why until we were on the way there. And they shared with me that the 23-year-old daughter of the Johnsons had died the day before, totally suddenly. She had died in an accident. She was completely healthy. and she was just so full of potential. She had just applied to grad school, and it completely shocked this family. So we arrived at their home, and they were in such a state of grief, as you would expect, really couldn't function at that point. It was still so raw and early in this crisis. But what happened to this family during that time was really incredible. It was an external crisis. They didn't have any control. They were just thrust into this horrible situation of losing their daughter. But what happened was their small group that they had invested in for the last couple of years just surrounded them. They were, a lot of them, at the house when we got there. They had arranged for meals. They were sitting with them a lot of the time when there are no words for a situation like that. They were praying with them. They were making the funeral arrangements and making sure that they were fed. They arranged for that visit from Father Michael. And the Johnson family obviously struggled in this moment, and I'm sure that their faith was shaken, but they also had the people around them, the community, and the faith built up, the hope built up in something that's ultimate and eternal, that they were able to weather this time, this crisis, this external crisis in their life. A really incredible family, still one of the most faithful families that you could speak to at our parish. And so that's one experience of an external crisis we've had recently.
Yeah, and it's so beautiful, the family like the Johnsons who had that foundation of faith to get them through that external crisis. But teens that in your parish that you meet may not have that foundation yet, and whether they face an internal or external crisis. And we see that right now with our teens, whether or not that foundation is strong or built, but no matter what, they're dealing with a huge external crisis right now, this coronavirus. None of us have control over it. And external crises can cause internal ones, and that's what's happening to our teens right now. There's this crazy shift in their typical lives and what they've always known, and they can't fix the external. We can't fix the external either, but our job is to navigate them to handle the internal crisis that they face. So we need to know the difference between internal and external crises, because how we support our teens, whichever crisis they're in, is going to be different. Dealing with both of these types of crisis is a life skill that we want all of our teens to have, but they are very different skill sets. So internal is going to be helping them deal with emotions and thoughts and reactions. Because during an internal crisis, they or you, if you're having an internal crisis, you're the epicenter. So your choices can either exaggerate or calm the crisis, at least for yourself in your heart or in your mind. External is helping them deal with the circumstances of the world around them, which we are all trying to deal with that right now and wrap our head around what's going on, because we didn't choose it. What's going on in any external crisis that they are having, they didn't choose it, but they do have to respond to it. So our job is to help them navigate that.
I have a friend whose favorite saying is that there are no atheists in foxholes. And I've loved that for this time, because we are really in our foxholes. We're all socially isolated. We're at our homes, and he meant it in the heat of battle, that when soldiers are in the foxholes and their lives are really on the line, that they will pretty much turn to faith whether they've had it before or not. And whether we're in our foxhole, crisis changes people's perspective. It's this opportunity that they have, and most of the time there's no in between. They will turn to their faith or they will turn away from it. And we want to earn the right to be there during these moments. It's not all on us to be able to speak that truth into our teens' lives, but that's a big part of the role that we have, is to use those opportunities to help people to grow in their faith. With the Johnson family, because they had invested in their small group so much over the years, when they lost their daughter, that small group really picked them up and gave them the lift in the community that they needed. Now, when we had our spray paint incident, Allie and I, admittedly, we didn't know how to handle it perfectly, and we didn't. We did the best that we could in that moment. And there were some teens that handled it exceptionally well and some that didn't. And I think really the difference for a lot of them was seeing the basis of faith that they had going into that crisis moment. Some of the teens who had just participated by writing their name and didn't really know that it was not a sanctioned activity, they stayed in the room as we explained what had happened, and they called their parents, and they were in tears over what they'd done. Their sense of morality was a lot more developed versus other teens who we asked to stay in the room. They walked out and they could be heard saying, they're not going to catch me, they don't have anything on me. And so a lot of what we want to do is to be able to develop the skills in those teens to be able to deal with these life situations, so that there aren't any atheists in Foxholes.
Yep, like Daniel said, no atheists in Foxholes. So we have an opportunity to steer teens towards God when they're in crisis, when they're in that foxhole. But our ability to leverage those life moments comes down to leadership. And we're going to talk about 3 different kinds of leaders in crisis. There's frozen leaders, hesitant leaders, and agile leaders. Now, we got this information from Carrie Newhoff, who is a ministry coach. She has some great online resources if you want to dive deeper, but we're going to focus on these 3 today. So a frozen leader in crisis, they aren't ready for the disruption that comes, and they can't see the mission beyond their methods. They've always been focused on their methods, what they do at their programs every week, how they handle their ministers or their students all in person, and they don't focus on the bigger mission, so they struggle or are incapable of changing their methods when crisis hits. Frozen leaders will just stay in a state of disbelief and pity and inaction because they just focus on what they can't do instead of what they can do. Now, hesitant leaders, unlike frozen leaders, they want to act, but they just have a hard time deciding how. They're afraid to begin. They're afraid to do something the wrong way. They're afraid to make the wrong change or decision. So they make as few and as tiny changes as possible. And these hesitant leaders will just stay in a state of wondering and hoping when things will be back to normal, when they can go back. And to some degree, right now, we are all wondering and hoping that as well. But hesitant leaders harp and obsess over that, so much so that when it comes to change, they just pity themselves if they have to change anything or if they have to change multiple times. And if that happens, they will make slight changes, but they'll pity themselves for it and they'll do just enough to get by, and they'll be happy with just being good enough during this time. So frozen leaders, hesitant leaders, and then we have agile leaders, and that is flexible leadership. These agile leaders have the ability to pivot and change not just once, but as many times as needed throughout the conditions of the circumstance. Crisis means that there is no clear answer and there's no immediate end in sight. So that is what we are in right now. None of us know exactly the answer of how to move forward with student ministry or any of our programs perfectly. We're all just trying our best. And none of us know for sure when this will really be over. It's a crisis. It's not a problem, because problems can be solved, but crises need to be managed. And that means managed daily. Our reactions and the way we're going about things need to constantly be evaluated daily. And agile leaders are willing to do that, and they're willing to adapt their methods and learn as they go, and to continue to make changes and adapt as we continue to have this new normal upon us. That was really hard for us in the beginning, as I'm sure you all felt. I mean, I'm a very type A scheduled person, so I liked our plan for the year. It was going to go off without a hitch, and this, for me, for all of us, threw a big wrench into our plans and what the rest of the year looked like. So it was hard to make these changes and to adapt. We started out by just emailing messages to parents and crossing our fingers that they would show their students the email that we sent them. And then we got to the point that we were posting on our website and we were gaining some social media followings. And now we've pivoted again, and we're actually doing our full program in a condensed version, but still with what a program would look like at our regular times on a Sunday via Zoom, live with our students. But it was not an easy process.
Yeah, we had to have some heart-to-hearts a couple of times just trying to figure out how many hours we were working and what to do that was going to be effective. And it was maybe some tears shed and some tough conversations, but we did make it through.
A lot of Zoom meetings where my head was just in my hands.
Yeah.
We, as Agile leaders, you don't have all of the answers. You don't know, but you are willing to keep asking questions and keep adapting and looking for new and creative ways to do things, because Agile leaders focus on what they can control and do, not what they can't. So those are the three types of leaders in crisis: frozen, hesitant, and agile. And you are going to have credibility in crisis if you are an agile leader and you're able to pivot and adapt in these moments. So this is another opportunity for you guys to share in the chat what kind of qualities that you look up to in agile leaders, maybe other ones that you follow or know, and then also what qualities you are trying to foster during this time in your help as you try to be the best agile leader you can be. Now, Daniel is going to dive a little bit deeper into how to be an agile leader when it comes to preparing for our crisis.
And it may seem a little bit backwards to think about how do we prepare for crises, because we're in the middle of one right now. But these are just some questions that we can kind of use to assess where we are in our preparations. And, you know, going into this, I don't know that we were totally prepared, but I want to be ready for when the next thing comes, because again, it's a question of when and not if when it comes to crisis. So I have some questions and some qualities that go with this. I won't say all of the questions. We have a document that we can send to you if you want all these to kind of do an assessment of how you're doing. But the three qualities that we're going to talk about are adaptability, agility, and anticipation. And they're similar in a lot of ways, and there's some overlap, but they really are a little bit different in that we're going to talk about practices, procedures, and then plans. So the first one is adaptability. Do you have a clear mission, but adaptable methods? And in any situation that you have in ministry, your mission really should stay the same. As a parish, we've stated that our mission is to love God, love others, and make disciples. And we didn't make that up. We got it from the Great Commandment and the Great Commission. It's a timeless mission. It doesn't change. We put that in our own words as a parish, but it's something that we're still trying to do, whether it's time of Corona or a regular time period. But all of the methods around that mission have completely shifted for us these last few weeks. And so our methods able to shift when everything else changes around us, except for the mission. And we found we need to have strong relationships and systems to be able to continue on with different methods while the mission is unchanging. So like Ali said, we've tried a lot of different strategies with trying to reach teens during this time and stay connected and share that mission with them, that sense of mission. Ali, you know as well as I do, we are not social media people, right?
No, not at all. Thankfully, we have one other person on our team. She just graduated. She's 1 year out of high school and she works part-time for us. So she's been teaching us plenty when it comes to this.
So we have always, we've always focused just a tiny bit on social media, but kind of pushed it to the side because we didn't really like it or have a lot of aptitude for it. But we had a little bit going before this. Well, it became a central focus for us. So we tried to just throw things on the wall and see what sticks at first. We tried going live on Instagram every day at 5 o'clock, and we quickly discovered that we're not really that interesting. We didn't have that much to say. So we did that for a couple of weeks though, and the audience kind of slowly shrunk. So we've gone to something else now where we're having teens do a lot more content, and they're creating a 2-minute devotional twice a week. We call it Take Two, and we give them a little bit of structure to work with, but it's really their own words, their own creativity, and their own experiences coming up with those devotionals. So we're having to pivot, and we're hoping that teens and families will follow us in the adaptability that we have, that we're not changing our mission, but we do have to change our methods. And a good gauge for this during times when you're not in crisis is how much you're willing to learn and to improve all the time. Are you willing to try new things, to innovate, to experiment? Or does your fear of failure prevent you from trying new methods? All right, so that's the first quality, is adaptability with the practices that you have. The second is agility. Do you have an agile structure? And this has to do more with the procedures, the systems, and the tools that you have in place that help you to function and to pivot strategies. So as a parish, we've seen this on a parish-wide level with broadcasting Mass. Now that's something that we've been doing for a few years, and it's a small portion of our people usually. The majority of people that we get are in person, but now it's our entire people watching every weekend. And so we need to use that broadcast in a lot bigger way. We have the system set up, but now we've enhanced it and done a lot more with it than we ever did before. So we had something in place that we were able to pivot with. Another way that we've seen that with our parish is through online giving. On a normal basis, 60% of our people give through electronic means, through automatic giving. But we've been able to use that tool as well as text to give tools. And the projections that we have week to week, we've been able to meet not only the projections that we had normally for a week like we're in right now, but we've been able to exceed those during this time of Corona because of the systems that we had in place. I think our finance guy is really amazing that way. And then the last system that we have in place that's been able to help us is the Parish Database. And I've worked in a couple of other parishes where this is always a huge struggle, to have a great database that you can rely on. And we've needed that as we've gone to working from home. So we use something called Ministry Platform. And again, it is so helpful for us not only to have contact information, but it tracks which small groups our teens and adult members are part of, what events they attend, how caught up they are on their training to make sure that they're safe environment equipped. All of those sort of questions are tracked through our database. So all of those systems give us a framework to be able to work around, where our ministries can continue even when we have to pivot and change. It makes us agile. The last thing with agility is how you use your ministers. Are they in a structure where they can pivot with you as well? Not only are they loyal enough to follow you, but you have the structure to help them pivot. So we've had ministers who served in student ministry who are meeting with teens in person to lead small groups and to do games and other things, but we also have ministers who serve on the parish level by greeting people and being hosts in the sanctuary itself, by serving food in our cafe, all of those things. And those ministers, their ministry went away very quickly, but we've been able to move them into being online chat hosts, getting groceries for families who might be strictly quarantined, and doing a call campaign throughout our parish to just make sure that people are not lonely out there, and to check in with them and see what care they needed. So all of that contributes to how agile we are in responding to crisis. All right, so we have adaptability and agility, and the third quality is anticipation. This is planning. So how have you prepared for crises? Because they're coming and we don't know exactly what it will look like. But do you have the financial and the human resources to sustain a change? We have to anticipate that crises are coming, put ourselves in good position to be able to anticipate those changes, both on a ministry level, but also on a parish level. And thinking about how we respond to various crises, one thing that Ali and I are working on right now is a manual for all safety and security procedures for crisis situations. And you can over-prepare or under-prepare, and you probably, as a personality, lean one way or the other. Over-preparing would be thinking that you're going to function on all doomsday scenarios, never spending any money, never starting anything because you're afraid of what might happen. whereas under-preparing can be not saving anything, having no backup plan, no structure that can support a pivot in your strategy. So we want to be somewhere in between those extremes. And this safety and security plan that we're working on looks at different scenarios that we've seen in the world around us. If we had a natural disaster, what would we do? Or fire? If, God forbid, there was a live shooter situation. Any of those sort of scenarios, we need to have a plan and have our leaders prepared. Who's going to communicate? Where do we need to go? But then also, it can be the internal crises as well. How do we respond when a student is going through thoughts of self-harm, or they've talked to somebody about thoughts of suicide, or they're threatening harm to other people? So we need to have plans for all of those sort of situations. That's what the anticipation means. All right, so those three qualities, adaptability, agility, and anticipation, are really, once you're in crisis, to have the ability to change plans. They're all great qualities when you're in it, but really before you ever get to crisis, the best way to build your credibility is to gain relationships. And we're going to just go into a little bit of our strategy for relationship building right now, and Allie's going to talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, all these quality and leadership skills are all great ways and crucial ways to have credibility when you're in crisis. But really, the best way to have credibility in crisis is to have credibility before crisis happens. And we gain that through relationships. So that's not easy. It's not just a one quick fix or a golden ticket that'll get you there. That takes a long-term investment in your ministers, in your teams, and in your families to gain that relationship. And how we do that at Nativity is by following a lead small model. So Jesus did this model. He led small. He had that close group of friends that he invested in to make those personal connections and relationships to teach, because one person, or Daniel and I, we are not capable of having a personal connection and relationship with every single student in our program. No human being has that capacity. We can't influence the many, but we can influence the few. And we can't compete with entertainment and what they get in their outside world and their fun that they get out there. Daniel and I say it all the time. We learned it on those live Instagrams. We're just not that interesting. We're not that fun anymore, especially to what they can get out there in social settings and with their friends. But small groups is where we can matter most. We can compete with society and culture on that stage, because that's authentic relationships. And we're offering them something that they can't get out in culture, the world. That's a safe place. It's a place where they truly belong. It's a place where they're known and accepted and heard. And some teens don't even get that at home, that safe place. They don't get it at school or in their social circles either all the time. So this is where we can win. This is where the church wins, in small groups. So 3 things for you and your leader to keep in mind. The first is to show up. When you're trying to gain this credibility through relationships, the first one is to show up. And that means consistently and predictably. We ask our leaders to make a commitment for a full year to come every week to this program. September to May, our program runs, and it's a weekly one. And okay, there'll be one-off situations where you won't be able to make it, we understand, but the expectation is that you will be there for this group every single week, because then they know that you're there every single week. They will know that you will be there. They expect you to be there when you show your commitment to them by showing up consistently like that. But you can show up even in more ways than that. You can show up surprisingly and in big moments. And that means going to their big state championship game. I mean, they remember that. That fosters, it builds a foundation of a relationship that is so special to that teen when they look up in the stands and they see you showing up for them outside of church, somewhere where they didn't expect you. You don't always have to do that. You know, we don't have time. Everyone has other lives too, but every once in a while, showing up for the big moments, actually being there, sending a text, just remembering that they told you on Sunday about this game on Friday, that's showing up, and that fosters that relationship to gain you this credibility.
And one of our coworkers, Kelly, likes to go to cross-country meets, and her son runs cross-country, but it's a great chance because there's so many schools that gather and you're standing around a lot of times, and it's just a great chance to actually see teens and connect with them. So showing up, the next one is to look for tension. And this may not be one that we really embrace in a lot of ways, but this is the time when you can really build your credibility with teens. Tension is a good thing when you accept and manage it. They're watching how you deal with tense situations because it has the potential to give them a sense of safety and security in their relationship with you and with a small group of people. So a tension point is when there's conflict, when there's disagreement, when they struggle with the church teaching, when they have doubt, when they have questions, can they bring those to you, to your small group? And it also, a tense situation is when you have to show some discipline, when you have to tell one of your teens that they need to be quiet and they need to participate, when you have to wrangle control of your group. That's something that I struggle with. I'm not a good disciplinarian, but teens are watching to see how you handle that, to see the words that you use and the way that you approach it. And teens are also looking to see how you handle their fears, the things that they struggle with, their anxieties and their insecurities. So look for those tensions and handle them in a way that it builds and breeds trust so that they can be safe and secure with you. And the last thing here, before I want to mention this point too, is that teens, it's really easy to just answer questions for them, to give them the knowledge that we already have. But what we really want to do is to teach them to think. That's how you get a safe environment with the teen. That's how you develop that tension. Even when they ask you for the answers to questions a lot of time, you may not initially offer those answers because you want to get them thinking. You don't just want them to have information, but you want them to be able to process in real life and give them faith that lasts. So you want to teach them to think, not just to know.
Yeah, we say it is not school. That's why in our small groups, we say sit in a circle. At school, they sit in rows, but here in small group, this is relationship. We are all in this together. We sit in a circle for easier conversation and comfortability between each other. And we also, to foster this, to hone in on this point, is we ask our small group leaders to talk 20% of the time and listen 80% of the time, which is very hard, I think, for anyone. But I mean, people with my personality, I like to talk. So it's something that you really have to focus on, but just fosters this to let them think and let them learn. And we're not just here to teach, but to be a part of a conversation, to facilitate this conversation and build this relationship. So show up, look for tension. And the third point is to model vulnerability. And that is not easy. As an adult sitting around with teens, it's not always easy to put yourself out there like that and be vulnerable, but it is your golden ticket. Teens these days appreciate authenticity more than anything, and they can sniff it out. They can tell if you are being authentic or not, and if you aren't, you will never gain their trust. You need to be open and show to an appropriate level, but just be willing to open yourself, your heart, your experiences with your own faith to them, because when you're open and honest, they won't be afraid to be with you. So you need to model that first.
So that's by no means a comprehensive list. It's just a start of how we've found to build relationships. We know that there's a lot of collective wisdom in this room that we're in virtually. So we'd love to hear the most effective ways that you have to build relationships. If you want to share those in the chat, what have you found that's really worked for you and in your ministry? And we just want to finish by quickly looking at what does this look like going forward. If we're building relationships, we're becoming agile leaders, we're asking the right questions, but the question still remains, where does our ministry go from here? How is it going to be different or the same after this pandemic or as the waves of this pandemic continue? So we're just going to share quickly what we're planning for now. This is not an exhaustive plan. It's just kind of the situations that we're looking at as we go forward. So we've got 4 scenarios that we want to plan for.
Yeah, this is our work in progress that we're working on, because we don't really know what fall is going to look like right now, for sure, at least. So there's a lot of possibilities of what could happen. We're focusing on making a plan for these four. And the first one is the scenario we call without walls, which means that come fall in our regular start of program, we are still completely digital, and we continue producing and posting messages online, meeting via Zoom, and we're not actually allowed to gather in person together on campus.
These next two scenarios are a little bit more challenging because they're kind of an in-between. So the second one is small gatherings, that if we have a limit to the amount of people that can gather, if it's 10, 20, 50, 100, 200 people, how do we use that within our ministry to continue the mission but change the methods? So small gatherings is our second scenario.
And third scenario is what we call both and there's a couple of bullet points under here, because this could be two different situations. It could be the small gatherings mixed, so we could be live for small gatherings, but we also want to have digital events where everyone could be together, because we wouldn't be able to be in person together. Or it could be the possibility that we've heard that come fall, the threat is gone and we are allowed to be full-fledged all together on campus for regular programs. So we start the year in program live, but come fall, there's another wave of the virus and we have to move back to digital. So this is the scenario of both and. We start the year off in person, but have to move back to digital.
And then the final scenario is if we're able to go back to doing live programs. So student ministry is at full capacity, in person, in church. But even then, we realize our ministries aren't going to really be the same. They're going to have this whole experience behind us, but we want to learn from it and use some of the things that we've learned. It's a crisis point. Nothing is going to be the same after this as it was before. So those are kind of the four things that we're planning right now. And at this point, that's what we had to present today. We'd love to just engage with some questions and see what you guys are doing and wondering about.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allie and Daniel. I'm going to go ahead and switch back and invite everyone to type in a question for Daniel and Allie in the question box. I really loved your honesty and sharing with us, you know, the things that have gone well for you as well as the things that did not go well. You mentioned kind of early on that, you know, your teens are experiencing a random amount of emotions, stress, anxiety in all of this. Could you be a little more specific without obviously, you know, violating any privacy things? But what are some of the things that you've been hearing from your teens in light of this pandemic?
We've had a couple situations where parents have reached out or teens themselves have reached out through prayer requests or things on our website or just word of mouth, just about struggling with loneliness and depression and just truly feeling so disconnected to especially the loss of school and social activities and their extracurriculars. That's where they got so much of their social connection from, which is half of how they identify themselves as teenagers. Just so much is reliant on what they do and who they're with and how they spend their time. And they've just had a complete loss of that. So we've had some situations of teens and parents reaching out, just really struggling with that loneliness and just a loss of identity.
Yeah, we did a message this week on hope, a video message, and we had some teens just record little clips of themselves saying what they were looking forward to. Every single one of them said, being with my friends. And I think that we've kind of talked about what are our teens feeling right now. And I think there's two things more than anything. It's loneliness from not being together in person. And the second thing is that they're bored. And that boredom is a really interesting phenomenon because it's this historical situation. And you know, with 9/11 or the JFK assassination or other historical events that have changed a generation, it's exciting. you know that you're part of something. We're sitting at home bored.
Mhm.
It's such an odd time for these teens to be living in.
It'll be so interesting to see how this impacts them in the long run.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we shared that in a message. This is going to define their generation the same way that 9/11 and JFK's assassination and other things in history have defined a generation.
Absolutely. Agnes says, you are both very well spoken and informative. Martha asks, what elements of new ideas do you think you will keep using even when fully live? So are there maybe some things that you've implemented now that you realize are having a great impact and you'll continue?
Well, as Daniel said, we are not very good at social media, and we definitely weren't prior to this. But I think this pushed us for an opportunity to grow our social media accounts and presence. And that's something that maybe we won't keep up so often with so much content when we go back to live, but it's definitely something that we do not want to lose, and we want to continue to grow because that's where teens live, on social media. So absolutely continuing to take advantage of that.
Absolutely. Deborah said, I love the idea of planning for the 4 scenarios. I'll be bringing that framework back to my people. Thanks for your ideas. Jay asks, what are you doing for graduating seniors this spring?
Oh yeah, we actually are really excited about this plan. We have not done a lot for seniors in the past. We kind of had a closing night where we would have their small group leaders talk about them and give them a blessing. But we're going to we have a 20, how many did we say? 28, 29
Okay.
seniors. Originally thought it was 20, so we were going to do 20 seniors in 20 days. But we have a little kit that we're putting together, kind of a senior survival kit for when they go off to college or whatever they're doing next year. They'll have a rosary and a deck of cards and a note from their small group leader and quite a few other things. So we're going to deliver them for 20 days, and we have a couple of questions we're going to ask when they go to their homes, keeping social distancing, of course. Do a little video recording of all of them, pray for them on their doorstep, and then we're going to compile it and do a video that we can show all of our teens.
A little
nice.
drive-by surprise for them and gift.
And what a great memory that they'll be able to take with them. Most definitely. Narianne said, I'm a DRE and most of my volunteers are 50 and above. How can I lead them to lead the teens in different programs adopting the new medium?
That's most of our leaders, our small group leaders are working professionals, parents, retirees. Retirees are a lot of our leaders because they have the time. And it is, I mean, it's an ongoing challenge to try to give the leadership information and how to build those relationships. I think we just keep going back to the relationship as being central and leading small, using that common language throughout the year. We've tried a lot of different things. We'll do a little, day retreat with our leaders at the beginning of the year, or half-day retreat, 3 hours. We've done little workshops throughout the year. We have small group coaches now who we kind of use to just coach one group of our small group leaders. So they're a leader for the leaders, and we can kind of cascade down our ideas. We've also produced little training videos through the year and given them ongoing formation. But it's just a continual process of kind of honing your message and your language and your formation with your leaders.
And right now, with technology as the new medium, it can be challenging for some. We actually have even very elderly leaders too who are awesome and their heart's in it and they want to still be involved, but it's just a challenge for them on how to stay connected with their teens right now. We utilize Zoom a lot, which makes it super easy. If you set up the Zoom, it's really just emailing them a link that they can click on, so helping them with that. But whatever it takes, if it's step-by-step instructions and you on the phone with them or printing out instructions, you can always screenshot like step-by-step what you need to click on to get where you're going. I mean, whatever they need to help them, because it's a learning process for us all right now.
Absolutely. This kind of just came to mind. Do you have student leaders also?
We
So,
do, and utilize them a lot lately.
right. Go to the
Yep,
young people, find out from them, right, what interests them or the technology, and then bring it to the older people, right?
absolutely.
Okay, let's see. Anna said, yes, most of our teenagers are bored. Can you recommend some spiritual activities that we can do as a family?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. We've had a couple of Facebook groups, one for parents and one for our ministers, where we've tried to provide a lot of those opportunities. I mean, I think some of it is just providing some fun ideas to do and connecting that way. It's Cinco de Mayo, so I made a little document that's all kinds of fun Cinco de Mayo ideas today. So we can kind of engage with them on that level. But as far as the spiritual activities go, we've we've tried to get a little bit creative. We've done some work with the Bible app or YouVersion. It's not a Catholic resource necessarily, but you can go through reading plans and you can choose the version of the Bible that you want. And there's just some great plans in there that you can do with people on a social level. We prayed the rosary today as a staff, and we kind of did it creatively, I guess. We did the first prayers together, and then we broke up into small groups and had everybody in the small group, it was 5 people per group, lead a decade of it. And then came back together for the large, or into the large group for the closing prayers. I don't know
All
what,
week.
Allie, do you
Would you?
remember? Try to think of what else we've done for family level or.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like we did one which leans more towards your fun, but I sometimes feel like that's what they need, an opportunity to connect, and then the faith can flow from that. But what we did as a whole church, so it was across adult ministry, children's ministry, student ministry. We had a social media campaign for all of us to have family dinners. So we had one night that we were campaigning for, like next Tuesday is family dinner night. So encouraging them to sit down to a family dinner together, share it on social media by tagging us, taking pictures or videos of their family dinner. And especially, we also connected it to Mass, as we're not able to be in communion together and receive that and break bread together. We can do it virtually this way, obviously not actually receiving the Eucharist, but just as a way to be in communion with one another. So that was a great way that it was families and it was across our whole parish that we tried to connect one another.
Wonderful. Um, I keep getting a lot of questions from people that they have some limitations on being able to communicate with the young people because of diocesan policy, right? Safe environment type thing. Do you guys have that issue? Is there a way that you are able to, I mean, obviously you're able to work within those policies. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge in the era that we live in because of that. So we have, through our database, we have a texting system. A lot of parishes have Flocknote. So I think that's a really great way. Teens are always texting, but if you can do that in a way that it runs through a system rather than on an individual basis. We use GroupMe as well, and we have multiple adults on those text message strains so that you're accountable. Social media is a little tricky because it's different diocese to diocese what you're allowed to do. We have an account that we use for students where we're all on it, our staff members. And so there's some accountability because of that. What else, Allie, with
Just
communication?
when it comes to like our leaders and small group leaders who want to communicate with their teens, they know that 2 adults must be on any text chain with the other teenagers, so that there are multiple eyes on that, just holding each other accountable. But it's going to be ever evolving right now as social media grows and communication continues to grow and evolve, but it is just dependent on your archdiocese and what they regulate.
And what social media platforms are you using?
Primarily on Instagram. We do TikTok,
That's
which
why
Uh-huh.
I kind of laugh about because we haven't ever made TikTok videos, but our teams run that account for the most part. So we've had them actually start to share. It's a 60-second limit on TikTok, but they've shared some of their kind of witnesses to faith, their testimonies, their favorite Bible verses, and explained why it's their favorite Bible verse. So they're really running that account for the most part, but we're on it as well.
Mm-hmm.
We're also on Facebook, but it tends to not be teens as much on Facebook. We're on that more for our ministers and parents.
yeah, we
Right.
have pages specific for our families, our parents at Nativity, and then also our ministers. So that's how we're kind of feeding them.
Same
Wonderful. Same with what?
with Twitter.
Oh, yes. Okay. Suzanne said, I appreciate your insights and it gives me encouragement that younger people like you are just getting into social media during this crisis. I'm thinking about what you said, especially like how vulnerability is that ticket, to the student. Some of my baby boomer generation were taught to keep so much to ourselves. How can we help our older leaders find comfortability with sharing both their spiritual and personal growth in relationships, as well as their failures, appropriately, of course?
What we always we do at Nativity when we're communicating with our parishioners, with our ministers, but we always say you need to give them not just the what you want to do, but first you need to give them the why you want to do it. So I think that comes from your training and communication with them. If you explain why, even though you know it's hard and it's not what they're used to, why it's so important and the difference that it could make in these teens' lives and in the relationship that they have with them, they will be more open to doing it. I also think, Daniel, you can jump in on this, but giving them a conversation guide, we call it, our small group questions for each time they meet. It's not run through the questions, question and answer, but it's just a way to get the conversation started for them. And I think that's really helpful for people who are like, I don't even know where to begin and how to start.
Yeah, so the material we were talking about with relational ministry and leading small, there's a really good book called Lead Small. And it's what we use to give to our small group leaders. It's not an Ave Maria book.
That's
Sorry.
okay.
It's what we give to our small group leaders to help them develop that ability to share with teens. But we give them a book at the beginning of the year. That's not enough. You have to say it over and over and over again in different ways, creatively. I mean, we tell them these questions are a guide, but there are still leaders who go down the list every week, question by question. They just hammer them out. And so we just have to keep saying that. One time is never enough. You just have to be consistent with that message and that training and try to help them to see and model it yourself as well. And our small group coaches have helped with that too, because they understand our mission and are trying to help people become better leaders.
Absolutely. Do you know offhand the author of the book, Lead Small?
Yes, I should know it. Reggie Joyner is one.
Okay.
It's from the orange curriculum. Reggie Joyner, and there's somebody else, but he's one of them.
Okay. Well, that gives people enough information that they could Google it if they're interested. Yeah.
Little
Yeah.
yellow book.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us, what you all are doing at Nativity. It really is very comforting, I think, for all of us to see that we're all in this together, right? And getting this information from you really helps to navigate where we're going, even if we're not sure exactly what that's going to look like in the future. I wanted to offer to everybody on today a promo code, a discount, 25% off your entire order at AveMariaPress.com using the code webinar 0505 for today's date. The 4 books that you see here are just some of Erin's favorites, some of my favorites that I think fit into what's going on right now in our world. Roy Pettifee has been a frequent presenter on our webinar series. His book, Helping Teens with Stress, Anxiety, and Depression, is excellent. He shares the tools that we need to step in, to make a difference, to be present to kids who are dealing with all of these things today. And also one chapter focuses on how our faith is another tool in our toolbox to help us through this. Sister Miriam Heidland, the Orange Book, Loved as I Am. She is a very popular speaker to young people, and this shares her story. She was a D1 athlete in college and was overcoming some things, healing from sexual abuse, battling alcoholism, and how she found Jesus and how that made her complete. So a great book to really share with young people. Be Healed comes from Bob Schutz. He too was a webinar presenter. He's the founder of the JP2 Healing Center, and really looking at spiritual, emotional, and physical healing through the power of the Holy Spirit and the sacraments. And then Be Brave in the Scared by Mary Lenenberg. She discovered that trusting in God and accepting his will in her life while caring for a severely disabled child. It's really a beautiful book and a beautiful read. But again, 25% off your entire order, minus a few exceptions that'll be listed in the email. But we really just want to extend this to you, something that can carry you through or help you during this time. So once again, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Allie, for sharing your time with us. Greatly appreciated. The webinars will be posted on Vimeo, YouTube, and our website. And of course, I will send you all a link tomorrow in the email. And I'll also include some of the information about some of the resources that we talked about today in the webinar. Please join us next Tuesday. Angelique Ruhi-Lopez and Carmen Santa Maria will help parish leaders minister to couples who are experiencing infertility. Thank you all so much for sharing this time with us. Have a blessed day, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye. Thanks again.